Hello everyone and happy Sunday to you all across the world. It's Mark here from Inside Rugby with Mark, and if you haven't been here before, I'm a Kiwi rugby fan, and I still am a Kiwi rugby fan living here in beautiful Cancun in Mexico. Now in this video I'm going to talk about my opinions when it comes to the changing of the guard in World Rugby and what's actually happening that I think a lot of Boks and All Black supporters need to take on board rather sooner than later. So let's get into the video right now. Well, we had it last weekend with what a lot of people thought was an unexpected win by the Wallabies over the South African Springboks, and this weekend we've had the same thing happen with an unexpected win by some people of the Los Pumas over the New Zealand All Blacks. But maybe there's another story that's going on here that a lot of people are living in denial about, and that is that the top of World Rugby is a lot closer than we all thought. Over the last couple of years, there's been lots of praise for Rassie Erasmus because he has been doing a fantastic job with the South African team. There was also a lot of hype around Scott Razor-Robertson coming as the new All Black coach last year, that he was going to turn the All Blacks into a crusading black jersey team that could take on and beat everybody in the world. Well, here we are 18 months later and things are looking a little bit different, aren't they? And I've got my thoughts and opinions that I want to share with you on that, and I also want to hear what your thoughts and opinions are. Now, to do this, I thought I'd give you a little bit of an analogy from the game of tennis. Yes, I'm an old tennis guy from way back, and back in the day, you'll remember that there was a young kid called Roger Federer who came on the scene at Wimbledon when he beat Pete Sampras in the final of that great tournament, and there was the changing of the guard in the tennis world. And then we saw Rafael Nadal come on the scene, and those two started to create one of the best tennis rivalries that we've ever seen in the game of tennis. Well, you could say that the All Blacks and South Africa have been doing that for many, many years. But just like in the tennis world, we saw the likes of Novak Djokovic come along and Andy Murray, and soon there were four competing for the top titles in the game of tennis. And now we're seeing the same thing in the world of rugby. We're seeing the resurgence of the Australian Wallabies. We're seeing the Los Pumas, who are now able to beat the top teams in the world. But we've also got England, Ireland and France as some others who are major contenders in the big tournament. And if you've got a short memory, go back to the Rugby World Cup in 2023, watch those games again and just realise how many of those games could have been very, very different in their outcome if it wasn't for a point here or there. My point is simple. We need to stop looking at the All Blacks and the Springboks as the benchmark in World Rugby. The other teams are and have caught up. I think what Joe Schmidt is doing with the Australian Wallabies is outstanding. If I go back 12 months and look at their performances, particularly in Argentina when they got beaten by 67 points, and then a year later they're competing and beating the Springboks in South Africa, it's almost unheard of. And that's why rugby across the world, in my opinion, is transitioning. You've got coaches like Joe Schmidt who have gone and plied their trade in different countries, got that different experience from different environments, and now they're given the opportunity to take it on board with their own team. Felipe Contepomi, on the other hand, has been building this culture and this belief in this Argentinian team, and he's now got players who truly believe that they can beat the best teams in the world. While on the other hand, you've got the All Blacks and the South Africans who are constantly trying to evolve their team's game and the way that they want to play the game of rugby, and this has caused problems, and there's no doubt about it. We've seen it on display, I believe, in the last couple of weekends. Rassie has used just about all the players he can, yet the solution is still not as dominant as we've seen from the South Africans in the recent years. Now, in my opinion, it doesn't matter what the biased commentators on Super Sport or the breakdown show in New Zealand say and believe in their own team, and I get it. It's all about national pride and passion. But I'm a guy, if you've been watching my channel for a long time, I'm the believer in the game of rugby. I want to see the best rugby team on the day win, and I don't care who it is. I'm a neutral in that respect. Yes, I'm a huge All Black rugby fan. I want to see the All Blacks win everything. But when it comes to games like we had yesterday in Argentina, it was fantastic for the game of rugby, as it was last weekend when we saw the Wallabies beat South Africa. Now, this is no slight against those opponents of ours. I'm not giving anyone a hard time. I'm looking at it through a very clear vision. And that vision is I want to see the top 10 teams in World Rugby being able to compete week in, week out, so we don't know who's going to win the game. And that brings back an even extra degree of passion and excitement, I believe, in the game of rugby. Another sport I love dearly is Formula One, but I don't want to see McLaren going around every weekend winning all the races. I don't want to see Red Bull doing it either. I want to see competition from up and down the grid. And it's no different in the way that I look at my rugby. I want to see Fiji having an opportunity to beat the best teams in the world. I want to see the French and the English doing well against the top teams and beating them with their different styles of game. This is what makes our rugby game so incredibly amazing, with all the different teams with their different cultures, their different coaching patterns, their different styles of play because of the players they have in their team. That's exactly what I've always loved about this great game over the last 50 plus years of watching it and embracing it. And now I think we're entering another exciting period, because imagine getting to the Rugby World Cup in Australia in 2 years' time and not knowing who's going to get in the final even, let alone the semi-finals. And for me, that's enough to buy a ticket and get on a plane and go over to Sydney and Melbourne and Brisbane and watch all those games, because the level of excitement will be absolutely through the roof. So yes, the All Black supporters can say, yeah, but we didn't have Cam Roigard and we've got other injuries, and the South Africans can say the same, and Willie LaRue didn't play this weekend and he would have made a difference. Yes, I understand. Those are all perspectives. But on the other hand, like we saw with the Pumas yesterday, when they came out and they executed their game plan, they're able to win. It's as simple as that. I thought the All Black forwards were going to be dominant yesterday, but I have not seen a Puma pack go as well as that against the All Blacks for years. And that was an outstanding performance, particularly by Pablo Matera. Not only did he set up that try, but he was huge around the field. The Lucy competition was outstanding yesterday, but it was the tight five where Argentina hung in there and took it to the All Blacks. We had Tamaiti Williams back on the field. We had the same pack we had the week before, yet it didn't make the difference. And that's what I loved about the game yesterday. The Pumas were able to find a solution to take on the All Blacks up front, and they were able to execute it on the day. In the Box game yesterday, what I loved about it was terrible for Australia that they lost Nick White, Joseph Su'a-Ali and Tom Wright. Three of their absolute key players, and if they were part of your starting 15, you'd be also saying, oh yeah, but we lost our key players. But Australia didn't. They pivoted and they used the players they had. Tame Edmund came on and did an extremely good job. And I thought Andrew Callaway did a good job as well, except for when he dropped the ball and knocked it on, which gave South Africa the opportunity to score the winning try. But Australia were close again. There wasn't much in it. If James O'Connor had his kicking boots on, they could have won that game. And therefore it sets us up for a fantastic remainder of this year's Rugby Championship, but also beyond. The Northern Tours are going to be more exciting this year. And then we're going to head into next year, the penultimate year before the Rugby World Cup in Australia. World Rugby is in a fantastically exciting position. Now, if you're a South African or a New Zealand supporter, I just would like you to take a breath for a minute and really acknowledge that these other teams have really stepped up their game and they're bringing it to us. And I think it's absolutely fantastic. Now that South Africa and New Zealand have had a loss each in the Rugby Championship, what does this do for that game at Eden Park? It even puts more spice on it, because one of those two teams are going to end up with 2 losses after 3 games. That was unthinkable before the start of this year's Rugby Championship in a lot of people's eyes, but it could be the reality. If we had a draw in Auckland and Argentina beat Australia, who would have thought that could have been the outcome of this year's Rugby Championship after round 3? Well, now anything is possible, and I believe that Australia and Argentina have the right to put their hands up and say, we've got just as good a chance of winning this year's Rugby Championship than any of their other teams. I just hope the Wallabies can get their injuries sorted out, because there's no doubt about it that the depth of their squad is limited. Joe Schmidt says that himself, and to rely on the guys who are inexperienced to come in and be able to finish off these games is going to be a big ask. but nothing's impossible. We saw that again in Cape Town yesterday. Now, despite all the calamity that's going on within the All Blacks at the moment, and I've been talking about it a lot here on my channel, and some of you have agreed with me and some of you have disagreed with me, we've got the situation that we've got. Razor is building the team that he believes can do the job not only in the Rugby Championship but going further forward. We might be finding some of the answers to the questions that we've been asking all along. And despite the injuries the All Blacks have got, maybe some significant changes need to be made, because based on what we saw yesterday, the consistency across this All Black team isn't there. As I mentioned yesterday, what happens when the All Black forwards don't turn up, when you've got a backline that's performing like the All Blacks do at the moment? On the South African side of the coin, what happens when the rest of the world catches up to the brute force of your forward pack? Have a look at the weights of the Wallaby pack versus the Springboks in the weekend. Have a look at the power and the strength that the Wallabies brought to that game. For me, it equaled what South Africa have been putting out onto the pitch. And maybe it's time for us all to start thinking that, hey, the Springboks pack is not unbeatable. It's not overly huge compared to what we can turn up with in our respective teams as well. There's so much psychology that goes on in sport, and for the last number of years, the All Blacks and the Springboks have been seen as the unbeatables in World Rugby. Well, I'm here to tell you on this channel that that's all changing, and it has changed. And we're seeing not only the resurgence of the Wallabies, but we're seeing the constant evolution of the Los Pumas team. We're seeing France get better and better, no matter how they decide to choose their teams when they tour and what they do with their local domestic competition. They beat the All Blacks last year. They have a right to play the game the way they want to play it. And good on them in France for doing that, because they're going to be a force to be reckoned with in 2027, just like they were in 2023, being a couple of points away from getting into the final of that competition. I'm here for the sake of World Rugby. I'm here to promote the game as much as I can on my little YouTube channel, because I'm a passionate fan of the game and I love seeing all the teams doing very, very well. Now, in my eyes, there's not going to be more upsets in the Rugby Championship this year, because we should all be starting to think anything can happen, because these four teams are good rugby teams, and on the day they can definitely beat each other. They've proven it, haven't they, over the last couple of weekends. So now it maybe comes down to injuries. It comes down to who turns up on the day, who's able to execute their game plan. Have they got the right game plan? South Africa deployed it against the Wallabies yesterday with a great high ball strategy. They made it contestable. It was a fantastic game strategy, and it came out on top in a small way for the Springboks yesterday. The Pumas came out and they decided that the All Black forwards were not going to be dominant yesterday, and they were going to play to their DNA and their backline, which was to be spontaneous, run the ball when they had the opportunity, and take the points when they were down in the All Blacks half. Santiago Carreras had a fantastic game for the Los Pumas yesterday, and looking back in reflection of that game, he was the game changer, wasn't he? He stayed steady under pressure, not only with his goal kicks but also in open play. He put the ball out when he needed to, he gained territory when he needed to, and he put the All Blacks back under pressure, which they weren't able to manage yesterday, with 3 yellow cards, a lot of penalties given away, and a lot of balls spewed up in open play. It's going to be fascinating now what happens over the next couple of weeks as the teams start to count the cost of their ongoing injuries. I don't know what's happening in this year's Rugby Championship, but there seems to be injuries beyond belief. But that's something you've got to deal with, and you've got to make sure you've got the depth of players and those players that have got some experience to come into your team. Has Razor done that with the All Blacks? I'm not too sure. He's down to the 4th choice halfback at the moment, and we still don't seem to have a solution that's going to get this backline away. And in terms of talking about getting their backline away, if the forwards are not going to be that dominant factor we think they are, then what's going to happen in these games? I don't think there needs to be mass changes made. I think there needs to be more purpose put around the strategy on how the team's playing. Do they really know how they can get out there and actually execute their game versus having a vision of how they want to play? They're two different things. You can put down on a piece of paper, we want to play fast, open, high intensity rugby. But if you don't have the skill sets that are able to deliver that, if you don't have the forwards that are setting up the ball and the platform for do that, it's all going to fall apart. And that's what I thought we saw in Argentina yesterday. In some degree yesterday, I thought we started to see a desperate All Black team. They started making simple mistakes. They kept playing at pace when they needed to slow the ball down a bit and actually go for territory and start to try and get some of that dominance in the forwards. In other words, they took Argentina on at their own game and they lost. So there's some big thinking that needs to go on. And I'm sure Russie, on the other hand, in South Africa is also going to go away and reflect on those two games against the Wallabies. Despite the very good win yesterday, I'm sure he's going to be thinking that game could have gone either way as well. And things are not as they seem in that Springboks camp. That's the way I'm calling it before we get to Eden Park. So there we go. I wanted to share my views and opinions today. I've watched some of the repercussions in South Africa and in New Zealand over the last 2 weekends. I think as a global rugby community, we must start applauding the game, the intensity of the game, the passion for the game, and the ability to other teams to bring it to the All Blacks and to the South African Springboks. So there you go. That's my Sunday morning sermon from here in Cancun, Mexico. Wanted to share my views and opinion because I'm super excited about what's happening at the top of the tree in World Rugby at the moment, and long may it continue, because we want to see these amazing test matches where we don't have any sense of knowing who's going to win on the day. Now, I'm sure you've got an opinion on this as well. I would love to read it in the comments, so make sure you leave your comment below this video. Let me know what you're thinking. Hit the subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, because we're rushing towards 20,000 subscribers, and that means we've got a fantastic global community of rugby fans who love talking about the game, watching the game, and sharing their opinions on the game, and that's exactly why I started this channel. So I thank you again from the bottom of my heart for watching Inside Rugby with Mark. I'm going to be back again soon with some more content around this last weekend of Rugby Championship games, and we'll see where we land after that. Okay, off to enjoy my day. See you later, everyone. Keep safe, keep well, keep enjoying your rugby across the world, no matter what team wins. That's the message from today. See you all soon. Bye for now.